All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Subspace protocol sync, where we discuss the backend consensus and storage protocol. Today, we've got a lot of things to discuss, but we're going to start by going through changes to palette feeds and how that impacts the relayer. And then we're going to move into some other topics. Okay, so I don't know who is best to give the update, Nazar or Serge, but let's just start with what has changed with palette feeds, if anything, since the last call, or what needs to be changed. Do you want to go, Serge?
Oh, I didn't implement any changes last week, so I only did code reviews. So I guess Nazar can.
Only free puts, I guess. Nothing
Yeah.
other than that.
Okay, so are all puts free or just special free put call?
All
puts are free. Okay. So that means so they still have a wait, but they don't have a transaction fee, right?
Exactly.
And what is the wait?
It's hard coded at 10,000 nanoseconds or units, whatever.
Okay, and what's the max wait per block right now?
It's equivalent of 1 second, if I'm not mistaken.
So 10,000 means 10,000 nanoseconds?
It's 10 microseconds.
10 microseconds. So that means that we should be able to do 10,000 put calls per block maximum.
I don't think we'll be able to put that many.
Well, sure. I'm just trying to understand what the theoretical limit is right now.
Yeah. Ideally,
Okay.
we would have proper weights there.
Okay. And what is the size limit right now? I saw there were some PRs about that.
Yeah, so currently it's 5 megabytes. It can be configured, but by default it's 5 megabytes.
That's the block size limit.
Yes, this is also maximum extrinsic size because it cannot be bigger than block, right?
Okay, so these are the defaults for Substrate: 5 megabyte extrinsic and 5 megabyte block size limit right now.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so that means we could upload about 600 puts per block maximum if they're 30 kilobytes each.
I think we probably wouldn't want to have two big blocks at this point. Just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well,
like if you want to reassemble the whole block, you'll have to read a lot of pieces for 5 megabytes.
Right. But for Genesis, we want to saturate the block size, right?
I don't know, maybe.
Well, I mean, it could take a long time to upload 40 gigabytes if we're not, or 100 gigabytes if we're not saturating the block size. Could take weeks, depending on what we set the block time to be. Okay, so I think we already identified we need to have a separate discussion about how this Genesis seeding is going to work specifically, but at least we know what the limitations are right now. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to discuss regarding the protocol or palette feeds that is open questions on your side, Serge, relating to the relay or the archiving of Kusama?
No, I think no questions on my side.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Serge regarding any of that? Cool. Okay, I think Serge, you're free to drop off, and we'll let you do what you do best. Write code.
Okay, thank you guys. See you next time.
Thanks, Serge. Okay. So before we get into the code review, Liu-Cheng, if you want to start with the discussion about about your feedback on the code and the things that you talked with Nazar about offline.
Yeah, so some concepts doesn't make a lot of sense to me. For example, the root block. So I see it's more like a segment header or segment digest. Do you agree? The root block.
Oh, you mean just the naming convention doesn't make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can name it something else. That's not really a big deal for me if it doesn't make sense, as long as it's not changing the protocol design. That was just what Srivatsan and I had come up with. It was actually called something different before, and it was even more confusing. And root block was, I mean, it's not really, it's a derived block. It's not like a block itself. It's just like deterministically derived from the blockchain. So it's like a root of other blocks. It's effectively what it is. It's just you're Merkleizing the blocks and you get a root. So that's where the name came from. Segment is recorded history segment size. That's the length of a period, right? In bytes.
So from my opinion, that we actually store the Merkle root, of the records on chain, and all the other parts are put in the transaction body. So the Merkle root is kind of like the block header. You know, the block header, we have a transaction root of the transactions, and for the segment, we have the Merkle roots of records of all the original records. So for me, it's more like a segment header or segment digest.
What do you think, Nazar?
I agree that the current name is a little bit confusing. Every time we use something that is called something block, we think about blockchain blocks. It's not a blockchain block. It's like, what is this? I'm not sure about segment header. I don't know.
I agree. I prefer segment digest, because I would use segment digest in the story as the name of that storage item.
Okay, so for a little bit of context, currently what we have called root block was previously called root block header, and there was some extra in it originally. I'm not sure we'll be returning that extra. So that was kind of the idea. We have like a block, we have like a header of it, and we have some extra information.
So for some context on where this is going in the roadmap, the reason that these are called blocks is because they will be synced. They will form a chain. So they are hash linked. The root blocks themselves are hash linked. And eventually that's how you're going to sync. So farmers will not sync the block headers themselves. They'll sync the root block headers, which is where the name comes from. So there's a root block, which is all the data that encapsulates some other segment of the history. And then there's a header, which is a short digest of that, I guess you could say. And the idea is that farmers will sync these root block headers, and then they can do a very, very efficient sync, especially when you combine it with something like Fly Client. You can get a very, very cheap sync to make sure that you're on the longest chain. So there's more concepts than what's in there right now that are baked into the design, even though it hasn't all been implemented in the code yet. So if we call it segment header or whatever, segment digest, yeah. And I mean, honestly, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day what we call it. I'm just saying there's a lot more that hasn't been implemented, which is in the design regarding this. And so if you say like segment sync, like if you think about it, it's like fly client segment sync or like root block header sync. And there's actually another protocol called Omni Ledger, I think, that uses this, and they call it like I forget, they call it some kind of block. It's like a compact block or a witness block or something like that, but they call it a block too in their protocol. So that's why we use that name block in there.
Okay, so if we keep this name, I think we just need to polish our documentation. Otherwise, it's like for me, it's kind of confusing. I'm not sure how other people see it, but for me, it's a little confusing.
Okay,
You
fair enough.
are probably the first person that just went through all of the code and read it.
Okay.
Feedback is very appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and our documentation definitely needs polishing just across the board. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I'm not opposed to changing the name. I think it's fine to call it something else if it still makes sense. If you think that name still makes sense with the fact that we're going to have like syncing of these segments, independent of syncing of the blocks.
Maybe segment blocks or something.
Yeah. So this is one thing, and we can take care of this later. And if we can't quickly reach a consensus, and like the another thing is we can eliminate the object archiver by using the Genesis build directly for the pre-Genesis data. Basically, we wanted to inject some data into the Genesis block, so we don't have to use this workaround, the object archiver. We can simplify this using the Genesis build greatly, I think.
Yeah, that was the plan. It was just not implemented. I didn't know quite how to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I can help with that. I can help with that.
Okay. So could that be something that you start working on, Liu-Cheng, is a PR to refactor that?
And before that, I would like to I want to understand the current code base more deeply. So I prefer to submit a documentation PR to extend the current Rust doc based on my current understanding, and Nazar can correct and extend them. And after that, I believe I can help with the object archiver refactoring, because the current code is still not 100% clear to me. So
okay, so you'd like to work on documentation first, and then
yeah, to understand the codes more.
Okay, so I'm just pulling up the board here so that we can track some of these tasks. Have you put any of these into the board yet, Liu-Cheng?
Nope.
Okay. Let's see. So we're going to update the Rust documentation.
Yeah.
Can you be a little? Can you get a little bit more specific about what it is you're looking to do there?
Okay. Basically, I want to overhaul many things. So from the consensus, from the archiving, and I think a lot of things that currently is not well documented.
Okay.
And for another things that is kind of confusing to me is the our three objects: the block object, the piece object, and the global object. Do you have any simple terms to like explain these three terms: the block object, piece object, and global object?
Is that the question to me?
No, things we have.
So it's not in the
about
specific. So
Mhm.
there's a specification which explains this at a very high level, but a lot of these are more implementation details that Nazar just sort of figured out from the specification that's in Notion. So no, we don't have any specs or docs that reflect this unless Nazar added some into the code regarding it.
Okay.
I just added
So-
small common strings, nothing comprehensive.
Okay, so that is what we could do in the documentation PR.
Can we have a bunch of these PRs so we can have like one per crate or something? Otherwise, we'll have too many discussions,
Okay.
I think. So we can like
Okay,
move forward.
okay. Yeah,
iteratively.
sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay, and which crates need documentation right now?
Let me take a look. So the archiving and the consensus, substrate consensus. Okay. Basically, palette offenses, subspace, SC consensus, subspace, or RPC, and we needed to do some cleanup works. There are some duplications of types used by the RPC and the farmer, so we needed some cleanup work. And
This is
SC
separate from
consensus-
documentation. You're talking just about actually code refactoring now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other creds, okay. Subspace archiving it needs Polish. Okay, let me. So that is for now, and we can update once we really get to do this job.
Okay. Okay, so you'd like to work on documentation and then refactoring archiver. Can you say that for me one more time, what you have in mind there?
Okay, currently there are some duplications about the types used in the RPC and the in farmer. So I would like to clean it up.
Okay, any comments on that, Nazar?
I believe there are already to-dos about that. So yeah. let's go through them.
I see it. Yeah. I see it.
Okay. And then there was another
And
one
then
you had. Go ahead.
And after this, we can work on refactoring the object archiver using Genesis build.
It's more like removing object archiver.
Yeah. And during this job, this step, I believe we can also do some refactoring on the block object archiver. Maybe, not sure, not for sure.
Okay. I did not put you down as that one, did I? Where'd you go? Oh, it's in medium priority now. I see they're prominent by priority. Okay.
Yeah, after this, we can work on the decoupled execution.
Okay. We can still have a design call about that this week, just to, or tomorrow rather, just to start having a discussion on that. But yeah, that makes sense for in terms of actual code contribution right now.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Great. Any other comments or feedback on any of that, Nazar?
Oh, that's pretty good stuff.
Okay, great. Okay, anything else you wanted to discuss or cover, Liu-Cheng?
No.
Awesome. Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Nazar, if you would like to share screen and just walk us through the latest PRs that you've been pushing and committing.
I think I just have one that I would like to show. There is not much work. Mostly managing all of these Docker Compose things to actually download it. It actually consumes like half of my CPU in terms of total utilization and like, I don't know, 20 gigabytes of RAM or something. So it's not very comfortable to work. So the one thing I'd like to discuss in more detail is the object mapping updates. There are two major changes here. First, we had object mapping, which was saying that this object is over there in that piece, starting at offset, some offset, and then it has certain length. But actually, the data we store, they are vectors in Rust. And when we put them into transactions, they are scale encoded. So every piece of data is actually prepended with the compact encoding of the length of that data. So we implicitly have the data in the, or explicitly have the data in the extrinsic itself. So by shifting the offset a little bit to the left, we can actually read the length from the data itself. It doesn't let us know how much data we have, but it makes a lot of things much simpler. And the other one was, that was the reason why our cover was crashing. We now carry the hash of the object. We create a hash right away at the very beginning, and then we carry over throughout the whole thing. I guess we can go through commits. Yeah. So basically, everywhere we had a notion of size, we removed it. In here, we had an offset of compact encoding of the data. We now don't have it, so we just a little bit to the left. If you imagine a straight line with bytes, just removed from everywhere around. And then in here, instead of slice chunk, we basically have just piece of data and offset. And that offset, we will read the size instead of having that as an argument. And then we can do the same operation to extract a piece of data from this to do the test. This is just a test file. And then on the object side, every object basically doesn't have size anymore. That's the only difference here. And on the farmer side, I had to update a little bit how mappings are created, because the size is this the test? I think, yeah, this will be changed in the next commit. This is not quite correct. Yeah, so it's pretty simple refactoring. I basically remove the size everywhere. And the second one, when we create the initial mapping inside of the block in the palette feeds, in addition to returning where the offset of the data is, we'll also return the hash. So that way we can carry the hash through the whole archiver process and everything. And then every kind of object, like block object and piece object and global object, will have eventually the hash. So when we farm, we don't need to create this operation the same way we did before. And when we actually create the object mapping that we'll put into our hash table, we don't need to hash it. We already have the hash itself. It just makes some things simpler because in this case, if imagine that our block actually crosses the piece boundary, we cannot hash it until we have the next piece, which might not be archived yet. So that is why sometimes when we try to do this offset, it was actually beyond the piece, the length. This one, I believe, was beyond the piece boundary, so it was crashing this process here. So as far as I'm aware, everything should work just fine with this pull request. And it's a little bit simpler. Other updates were really minor. There is nothing to discuss there.
Great. Liu-Cheng, did you get a chance to review that PR?
Actually, I didn't really look deeply, but from my current experience, what we have done with the object mapping is really brittle. I don't know. I have no idea how to improve this, but it's really brittle.
At least we have a bunch of tests for those. Because
Yeah,
well, we have
yeah.
tests in some cases. Because I also don't trust myself. I rechecked it multiple times, wrote tests I can write, because it's really, really.
I know. But you know, the unit test can't guarantee 100% security. Yeah.
That would be fun to review for security guys.
Okay, so just an idea. The current what are we currently do with the object mapping is really brittle. Haven't got an idea. Like we can have an alternative solution. I don't have one at this moment.
Do you mean for the implementation or for the actual design?
For the implementation.
Okay.
Implementation.
Okay. All right. I will create a ticket to do that, and we'll add it to the backlog so that we're at least tracking it as an optimization, or I don't know, maybe we'll say security improvement. One thing I'd like to start doing immediately is anytime that Nazar creates a PR for anything touching the Subspace main repo or the mono repo, I would like for you to review it before it gets approved. Even if I review it, it should not necessarily be ready for merge until you reviewed it, Liu-Cheng, and provided your honest feedback. And don't pull any punches or don't hold anything back, because Nazar certainly does not when he reviews. And likewise, Liu-Cheng, anything that you commit into the Subspace repo, Nazar will review. I'd really like you guys to start just cross-checking each other's work and getting onto the same page as to what we're building here, and getting, because I mean, I've been reviewing these things, but I'm just reviewing it to make sure, like, does it actually fit the design that I have in mind? In terms of implementation, I'm like, well, you know, Nazar did it this way, I might do it differently. You know, I don't know which one's better, so I'm just going to go with the way Nazar did it. But I'm not really going to challenge him on those things. But if you see something that you think is, maybe we could implement it differently, or there's potential issues with the way that we're implementing it, then don't hesitate to provide feedback on that.
Yeah, sure. I believe I'll be more capable of this reviewing job once I done the documentation PR.
Sure.
I think any review is really useful, even if you even if you write, I don't understand what's going on here. this is also a useful review because probably I need to write documentation, I need to refactor it somehow, I need to make sure that it is readable for other people, because like it makes sense in my head, but in a year it will also be challenging for me to recall what was happening in my head back then. So like any feedback is useful either way.
Agree.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to cover, Nazar?
Just one note, when you create pull requests, Liu-Cheng, please assign me and maybe someone else as reviewers. You should have permissions to do that now.
Okay,
I get
sure.
notifications about all pull requests because I'm watching the repo, but in general, like if you want Jeremiah to look at something, just assign him as reviewer. Maybe assign
Okay,
Ozgun
okay.
just so he can also get notifications.
Okay.
Yes, definitely assign me just so that I'm aware and like informed of what's happening with the PRs. I'm probably I might come in and review it. Like if I get a chance to read the code, that's basically what my review means. It means I read the changes and like I didn't see anything like glaringly wrong. But it doesn't really mean it's ready for merge. That would need to be Nazar's review.
Okay.
And I promise I can code. I can write code. I haven't done it in a very long time, but I'm actually not a bad developer at the end of the day.
I confirm that.
Yeah.
And Liu-Cheng, it will be great if you assign me too, because probably I will not deliver helpful comments, but at least I will see how experienced people
Sure.
so it will be beneficial for me. Thank you.
Sure.
Also, there is one thing that we didn't discuss before, but in terms of organization, it might help. Basically, there is this convention to have, in some repositories, to have code owners file, which basically says this person is responsible for these like subfolders of the project or files. And every time someone tries to modify it, they will automatically be assigned as reviewers for the pull request. So like if Ozgun is like maintaining this thing, like let's say farmer, he's like really experienced, really knows farmer very well, we can assign him. And like every time any change to the farmer happens, Ozgun will automatically be assigned as a reviewer. So maybe we can do that to avoid this like manual work of like selecting people. I don't know.
Yeah,
Just
they call the owner. GitHub feature.
I just found that there were like projects where some people were contributing alternative build system support. And this was like, we don't really know this build system. And those who contribute basically say like, assign us as code owners for these like specific files, because we are willing to help you maintain those. So this is like potentially a pretty useful thing.
Yeah, Substrate already used that.
Okay, cool. Then we need to do that going forward. I guess we just need to identify. Is this per repository, or can it be more granular than that?
It's in every repository. You can have this file, and you can have as many entries as you want. You can assign multiple people to the same folder. Let's say in Subspace Relayer, we can make sure that all the front-end changes absolutely go through Leo, and all the back-end changes absolutely go through Serge, no matter what. So yeah, we can do whatever we need.
Okay.
Like I'm kind of free. If you don't want to spend time on that, I can be responsible for that, configuring that, if you want.
Yeah. Yes, I'm creating a task right now. This is just going to be for, let's see. We should do it for Subspace and for Relayer?
Yeah,
and
I think for a layer we can basically say that Leo should review everything related to front end and Serge for the back end. For Subspace, I guess me and Liu-Cheng should be reviewing everything.
Okay. All right, I'm assigning this to you, Ozgun. All right. Okay. Anything else that you want to cover, Nazar?
Yeah, actually. We had an interesting problem with the testnet that we're running so far. It's at 80,000 blocks so far, and we have 4 peers now. There was 3. Basically, I had an internet connection outage, and I got separated into the alternative chain. And the reason for that was that it was not connected to the rest of the network for long enough, such that like my old root blocks were already erased from RAM, and I had like own chain built. So when I reconnected to the other network, I was basically not able to verify some of the older blocks. It was a strange problem, and I think I believe there is a flag force authoring, which says that if you are offline, you shouldn't produce blocks, but it still does produce blocks. I'm not entirely sure why, so I have a ticket about that. It's not a problem as long as you're online, but if your machine is running but it's not connected to the rest of the network, you'll just diverge into something alternative and you will not be able to come back. So since we have this K depth, we basically need to be on the network, or we need to not produce blocks. Otherwise, we'll build K blocks, especially on the small network, and then we'll not be able to go back. This is effectively hard finality on our network right now.
Does that make sense to you, Liu-Cheng? You got a strange look on your face.
I don't know. I understand the context. Sorry.
So we have one part of the network which has a farmer which produces blocks, and we have another part of the network. And they're like cooperating, but then suddenly network between them broke. They started building their own chains, but when they tried to reconnect together, they were not able to verify each other blocks. So they were not able to like converge on one of the versions of the chain.
So basically, we've got two chains that are more than K deep apart, like 30 blocks apart, and it should switch over like longest chain rule to which, like when the network reconnects, it should switch over to the longest chain. But there's like a setting in Substrate which says, well, if it's more than K deep, I'm just going to go with what I did, versus like switching to what the network has because maybe it's a long range attack, for example.
I don't think it's in Substrate. I think it's more of our implementation details. We don't handle it right now.
So what did you mean by KD?
Okay, so there are two Ks. There is a small K which clients use, that they wait certain number of blocks before they consider transaction confirmed, right? Like in Bitcoin, you wait at least 6 blocks or 18 if you're conservative. But there is also BK in our protocol. That's how many blocks should the block be in the history before we start archiving it. So we don't archive like the head of the chain. Just wait. It's kind of like with Bitcoin Litecoin, you just wait certain number of blocks.
Yeah, I see that what do we call it is confirmation steps, right?
Yes, but this is like there is K small, which is for clients, and there is K big that we have in specification, which we use for archiving.
Like capital K versus lowercase k.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have two numbers.
And so if it's more than capital K deep, like if there's a network partition with a fork that is more than capital K deep, then it won't switch over to the longest chain. It'll stay with whatever it saw, like Nazar's machine, for example, saw. So we have these like long running network partitions if there's ever a a temporary split view, but they should converge back to one chain.
So this is a problem. Okay.
This is a big problem.
I think, but I think this should be handled by the fork choice, right? So do we
Ideally,
have any?
yes.
So do we have any customization to the fork choice implementation?
It's currently longest chain. But as I mentioned, it tried to converge, but it wasn't able to verify blocks. That's why it failed to converge.
So we perhaps we better to create a GitHub issue for that, like we have the reproduction steps, and so that we can track it properly.
I already have on Notion, ticket on Notion.
Okay, Notion. Okay.
Oh, you do? Which, what's it called?
Sorry?
It's in the very first column at the top. It's called Node shouldn't try to solve offline. And there is a small description.
Node shouldn't try to solve offline.
That's basically what
Oh, it's in
happened to
no
Nazar.
status. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I just created one called handle K deep forks under network partition. I didn't realize that you already had one for it.
I'm trying to either create a to-do or a ticket because I will forget about it.
Okay, well, let's move it over here to high priority and let's assign it to yourself. And we'll copy in the title of this one and then delete that. Okay, so is that something that you can continue to work on, Nazar? Do you have an idea how to fix that, or?
I do not have a good idea how to fix it. And I would say it's more like a medium priority. It's kind of an edge case. It doesn't immediately prevent us from deploying the testnet as we have it right now. But this is something that needs to be fixed midterm.
Okay, I just moved it to medium. Okay. All right, do you have any other thoughts on that, Liu-Cheng?
Nope.
Okay. Okay.
We have to really look into this problem and to figure out how we do it.
Yeah, it seems like a fundamental thing that might take a little bit of time to unpack and understand what's actually happening here under the hood.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
realistically, idealistically, we will have to roll back pieces creation on the archiver and restart the archiver from whatever is the agreed converged chain. And we need to unplot some of the pieces if they are wrong. But this will be a little bit tricky to implement.
Well, I mean, there's a couple different cases here. So in one case, I might just lose my connectivity entirely and I have no peers, in which case I should probably stop produce, after a certain amount of time, after 60 seconds, I should just stop producing blocks. And that will probably handle 99% of these problems. Now, there's another case, which is highly unlikely, but theoretically possible, where somebody's actually able to partition the network into subnets.
Isolate a country or a city from the rest
right.
for a little while. Yeah.
Right. And in that case, then you will actually have these long-running forks, and then you'd have to, once the network reconverges, you'd have to, or reconnect, you'd have to figure out which one to go with, and then in that case, you might actually have to do this rollback. But that's non-trivial implementation-wise to fix that. Whereas I think we could probably have a very simple rule that says if no peers, if peer count is 0, start a timer. After the timer elapsed, stop producing blocks, something like that, for example. I
think it should stop producing immediately, because you'll not be able to broadcast it anywhere anyway.
True.
On partition, actually, since we've made our pieces addressable by their index instead of hash, we might get away with just overwriting them on top, because the hash of the index will be the same either way, right? So if you have their own piece plotted, you will just sometimes produce incorrect solution. But as you catch up to the head, you should just overwrite all of the pieces with the correct ones.
Yeah, that's true. It's
you
not
just
as
need
clean,
to handle
but
the farmer side that if you have the same index, you just override it. That will be the easiest solution, I think.
Are you aware of that distinction, Liu-Cheng, between mapping pieces by index and mapping them by content addressing, and which one we're actually using?
I think we've switched to index, but addressing by index before we explained anything to Liu-Cheng. So
okay, so
he probably doesn't have this mess in his head.
Okay, great. That's even better. We used to address like IPFS does, like hash the piece, and then that's the piece address. And we switched to doing it by the address is the index of the sort of like the segments of the piece themselves as they're created in the ledger. So that way you can sync. You can literally just like say like hash index 0, and then ask the network, give me the piece at index 0, like hash index 1, and you can reconstruct the ledger kind of deterministically from a client versus having to know like, well, what is the first piece of the ledger? And you can still verify all this. Like as you build it, you can verify it and make sure that you are building the right ledger that matches whatever somebody told you the longest chain was. But it actually simplified the architecture dramatically. So when Nazar says piece address, he just means hash of index, basically.
Yeah, and some of the data structures, they had hashes, which is 32 bytes, and now we just have 8, which also adds up in scale.
Okay. So I think we've got really 2 tasks there. Then we've got a short-term fix and a long-term fix for this. So I'll just note that in here. Short-term fix is to stop producing blocks on no peers. Fix is to handle rollbacks under large network partitions. Okay. All right. Should we go to the board and just look at priorities a little bit for what you're going to be working on, Nazar?
I don't personally need it.
Okay.
If
Can
you
you-
need it for something, we can.
Well, maybe we'll just make sure everybody else is aware, or me at least, as to what your priorities are right now. So you're working on the test net. This one's in progress as well.
I think we can move it back. Basically, I was trying to do a bunch of things. I was just spending like 15 minutes, half an hour to research what it takes to do it. Here I discussed with you, I had the concern that the signature has to be stored in full in the solution. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to verify it. It's not the same as a hash where we can truncate it, or like HMAC, I think we had. So in this case, the concern was that we have 64 bytes instead of 8. You confirmed that it's fine, so we'll probably go with that. That's why I didn't proceed with it immediately. I also researched some of the other ones, like verify piece is the part of the actual history. It's tricky to do. And there were some other tickets which I also did a little bit of research, but I didn't like implement them because they're non-trivial, but I'm like thinking about them. So I think we can move this back. I guess the highest next priority is basically the pallet vesting. So issue placeholder tokens. I also did a bunch of research. I read the code for different implementations. And there are different ways to do it. There is one quick way, I think, and the more correct way, which will take probably a week or 2. So I think we'll go with the quick one.
Okay, so this is really in progress.
And this is, I don't remember if it was high or medium. Derive local challenge can be high.
I think we should get rid of some of these security problems we have right now before we start working on retrievability.
Okay.
So yeah, we definitely want to support epoch transitions. We want to derive the signature correctly. We want to verify correctly. Those are all important.
On transition without blocks, I actually asked a question on the matrix. They didn't reply to me in a week, so probably have to ask somewhere else more practically. The logic is like very non-trivial, and they have this pellets slots, which has a bunch of logic related to transitions and stuff. And I think they have one more which handles randomness. I don't remember if it's slots or something else. But basically, there is like a lot of non-trivial logic there. I don't quite understand what it's doing. So I was like really concerned with modifying anything. So I wanted to confirm first. Yeah, so I'm already thinking about this as well. I just don't have like concrete plan what to do.
Is there not just a simple override we can do, like an if then or something like that?
It's more tricky than that, and I think there are actually two places in the code base which are like they are kind of related, but not directly in the code. You know, they just do the same, like they do related things, but they're like in completely different places. So I think we'll have to modify a little bit in runtime and a little bit in the client, and it's quite untrivial, not non-trivial to do.
Okay.
But I don't think like you can help me with this too much. Just need to figure out.
All right. It seems, I guess it just has to do with the way it's wired up. I mean, it seems like a really simple thing. It's like if we don't have a block, we just hash this, you know, the last randomness again.
Yeah, but it's we can go through the code if you want. Maybe like
okay.
Today
I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word for it.
I wish it was easier.
All right. Okay. And then there's also another task which we need to have basic issuance, which I don't think is on here anywhere. We need to actually issue block rewards.
Oh yeah.
Should be fairly
And we
straightforward.
probably need to tweak. I don't remember what the limit is, or if there are any limit. We probably need to add the concept of how many Subspace credits there will ever be on the network in general.
Yes, that's so the first one, so this would be, let's call this continuous issuance, which was fine for the test net, where we just always issue one block or one credit per block. Later, we can do a implement, just call it token economic policy. So this is basically a halving.
I think here we can also follow examples of the other chains that already implemented this. I'm pretty sure someone already did exactly this, like have a limit, halving, some predefined like teammates and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, we don't have to worry about this until we get to mainnet, really. This is just something that we need so that we can have some sort of competition between people, some way for them to earn money and spend it on the network. It should be pretty straightforward. Okay. We really need to do that before we can even implement cost of storage. Although this is something we're going to have to do here fairly quickly before we can have retrievability working. No. Okay.
Oh yeah, let's create a ticket for that. I have a to do in my list. We need to not put anything in transaction pool on nodes which are not validators. There's basically currently the testnet is running in an ugly way where every RPC endpoint actually, like basically everyone is validator. Long story short, like validator in terms of flag, they do not actually produce blocks, but otherwise there are some errors happening. It's not a word, so don't bother.
Don't put extrinsics into mempool of non-validators.
Yes.
Actually, only, let's do it this way. Only put. Well, is it a validator is not the same as a farmer, right? That could just be a full node.
It is. It is. Basically, they have a validator who is basically a validator is someone who produces blocks.
Okay.
I'm not sure Substrate allows you to like change the name of the flag. Maybe it does. We'll see. So we need to like run archiving process and everything, but just don't need to deal with the consensus parts.
But it feels like we're going to have to do that. I mean, because a full node means that you're a full validating node, even if you're not a block producer.
Right. That's fine. You just don't create unsigned extrinsics that you then use to create a block. You don't create block yourself, we just validate them.
Oh, we're talking about unsigned extrinsics.
Yes.
All right, I thought you
Yes.
meant all extrinsics. Okay,
No.
okay. I think that's probably medium priority. Okay. All right, so I think this is another one that we've got to figure out here, is how to stop storing the proof of replication or the encoding in the block header.
Yes, it's actually related to verifying the actual whether the piece is belongs to actual history of the blockchain. It's kind of the same thing. As soon as we can retrieve the whole piece, we can verify the witness against the root block. But right now we just don't have DSN to actually retrieve it from somewhere. And we were discussing whether we want to query the farmer, but that's like an ugly way to do it.
Oh, you're saying we can't do that until we have retrievability implemented.
I think not that retrievability. That retrievability, I believe, is just an RPC on the farmer, where we can just get a piece or we can get an object. But that assumes that we have full farmers, which will not be the case eventually.
So we have to have the full DSN working before we can do that?
I think we need to have at least some.
Well, but the idea is that we won't implement the DSN, or we won't have multi-replica or partial replica farming until we have the DSN. So until that point, everybody will be
Even full
able to.
replica is fine. We just need to have an API to query something from the
Yeah, that's what basic retrievability implies, that we would have that. So I think that can follow that task. Okay. All right.
Just looks like an epic then. Everyone is assigned.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parts to it. Maybe it needs to be pulled out into smaller tasks. This is why we need a milestone chart. Okay. Can implement runtime events like farming, drive salt from on-chain randomness, secure key management, chain selection. Okay. Okay, I think that's enough to keep you busy for a little while.
Yep.
So really, we need to get placeholder tokens issued, and then we're going to finish standing up the testnet. We're going to fix these more glaring security and efficiency issues, and then we're going to focus on retrievability. Okay. This is probably even less important than that. Okay, cool. Anything else we need to cover on your side, Nazar?
No, I believe that's it.
Okay, great. Let's transition now to Ozgun. If you want to give us your update, or if there's anything we need to cover.
Sure. I can give you the update. Okay. I think you got it now. My screen. So, okay, this is the Subspace farmer again. I'm starting from the files, then I will review the changes. So I actually changed the repo a bit, but reverted those changes since we planned with Nazar step-by-step changes, and these were not in time. So commands folder is back, and there is a new file called identity, which is mostly affecting farmer in commands. And there is a file for library. Other than that, let me go through the changes. I don't want to go over commits because some of the changes are reverted, so it's better to review the changes on its own. I'm going to start with identity, so let me show what's new in there. This is a struct, basically holding a key pair and a context for signing the pieces. So we can create a new identity or open an existing one. And we can access the public and private parts. I believe this will be not public in the upcoming versions. I'm not sure. And this is actually signing content with the context. Content is given by argument. And let me quickly summarize the library. Currently, it's only giving a public usage of identity. Other than that, there's nothing, but it will be incremented for sure. In main, we are also using these new things, but other than that, these parts were too common in the whole library. So this part is extracted in a common .rs. So let me find it and show it to you. So now main and lib is using that for common things. And yeah, we don't need to review those. Those are just small use changes. So let me go over the farm rs, and I believe it will be done for covering the most important parts. Okay, here. In here, we were creating a identity file. And now instead, we are just calling this from the new identity struct. And in every place that we are using key pair, we are not using the key pair anymore. We are using the identity. Again, and also like very small change, but these CTX are no longer required in here. So a little bit of reducement of code. And we didn't need this public key. And some of the imports are deleted, like Schnorkel is no longer relevant to farm.rs, which is a good thing. We don't need to import Schnorkel for that. I believe other than that, that's it for the first phase. And yeah, I will be working on the second phase when we decide on what to do. Any questions or anything you want me to review in more detail?
Liu-Cheng actually created a workflow in GitHub Actions that generates documentation. So I just sent a link where you can actually see what the library looks like right now.
Okay. Should I open it now?
You can if you want.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, you said, Ozgun, that you're going to be working on next steps once we decide what those are. Does that mean that you're blocked until we have that call?
Kind of, yeah, because probably if I decide on my own, it will not be 100% accurate. That's why I spent today working hard on Rust exercises so that when the time comes to implement them, I can be more fast.
Okay, let's have a call after this one with you.
Sure, sure.
Okay. Can you handle that, Nazar? I've actually got another meeting after this.
Of course.
Okay, great. And then, but we'll still have the design discussion on Wednesday to talk bigger picture.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And what are you thinking for the next steps, Nazar?
I think we will have either plotter or farmer abstracted away such that it is usable from the outside. They are right now kind of like separate parallel things running in parallel. So we can just work on the farming, for instance, and then we can work on plotting independently. So we will have, in addition to identity, we'll have some more data structures exposed.
Okay. And Ozgun, I'm looking at the board. We just have this like one task, refactor farmer bin to lib, which is more like an epic. And that's what you're working on right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you come in on your own and update this task just with like some checkboxes of like step 1, step 2, whatever, to show what you've currently implemented. And then after your talk with Nazar, you can add in the next steps that you've got for this.
Yeah, one question on that. Like, let me open the here. So let me get it right. So do you want me to split these into little pieces in here or in Farmer protocol? Because in
You
Farmer
can
board,
actually open it like a page.
yeah, I know.
Can have to-do list inside of it.
Yeah, I can do that in here.
Or are you
Or
already tracking it on the farmer board?
Yeah, like
Okay, I didn't realize that.
yeah. Where do you want me to do it? I can do them.
No,
in
that's
both.
fine if you do it. I didn't realize you were tracking it in there, so it's fine just to leave it here. So can you just review us then on what's on the board, like where this is at?
I didn't fill the inside of the pages, but yeah, the phase 1 is completed. I can fill in what's being changed in phase 1, and phase 2 is not been decided yet. So after this call, we will decide it with Nazar, and I can fill in that too.
Okay, so phase 1 is abstract, like replace key pair with identity and abstract that out, and phase 2 is undetermined.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, if you could make it a little bit
to complete it.
Sorry?
Can you move my ticket to complete it? I believe it's done a long time ago.
I couldn't hear you, sorry.
My ticket assigned to me plot genesis be set on startup. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can just update these so that the phase 1 is a little bit more descriptive, as like the phases like in the title or in the body.
Sure. I will do so.
Okay, and then we can just remove this from the protocol board since it's now being tracked in 2 places. I'm just going to delete this task.
Are you deleting or should I?
I just deleted it.
Okay then.
Yeah. Okay. All right, anything else we need to discuss on the farmer side? All right, and I just want to reemphasize from a big picture point of view, the main purpose of this refactoring of the farmer is so that we can use it within the desktop farmer. So let's just keep that in mind as we're going through this. We're trying to expose this API in such a way that the Tori framework can very easily run a farmer, and these commands are accessible, like linked up to some user interface at the end of the day.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Anything else we need to discuss, Ozgun, on your side?
I think I'm good.
Okay. I see that there's a task in the protocol board called re-implement fast plotting, which I believe that means batched plotting. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is that something that that you're capable of doing, Ozgun?
Nazar, like if you think I'm capable of, I can do so.
I think we need to continue working on the refactoring to library. Otherwise, it will be delayed significantly. And
Okay.
since our network is small, it's not like super painful right now. So either me or Ozgun will take care of it later.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering if we can give Ozgun a couple of other tasks to work on. You know, if he submits like a PR to you for the farmer and he's kind of just waiting on review, you know, that he's got other stuff that he might be able to work on in the background.
I think we'll just have next 2 steps defined. So he
Okay.
can work on those in parallel if necessary.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. All right, guys. Going around. Anything else that you guys want to cover or talk about? Anything we missed?
For my next PRs, I should assign Liu-Cheng too, right? Or no?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah, anything in this repo, Liu-Cheng should, unless it's, well, we took the TypeScript out actually. Yeah, so there's no TypeScript left. So yeah, anything in this repo should be reviewed by Liu-Cheng for sure. Okay, great. So let's just recap next steps to make sure I'm tracking everything correctly here in my head. So Nazar, you are going to be working on palette vesting And then you're going to work on fixing some of these security features or issues that we discussed at the offsite and final kind of implementation steps over the next few days or week while we try to get the testnet stood up as well. Probably next week, hopefully, we'll be able to start working on the retrievability plan for that and maybe some of the initial steps for implementation there. Ozgun, you are going to be syncing with Nazar after this and figuring out the next steps for the farmer bin to lib transition. And we're going to have a more long-term call or like a bigger planning call for that on Wednesday to see where that's going to go and how long that's going to take. And then Liu-Cheng, you are going to be working on documentation, PRs, and then refactoring some deduplication of code, and then working on a better implementation of the archiver. And we'll also be having a call tomorrow with Nazar to discuss the decoupled execution design. And hopefully in the next week or two, we'll be able to start working on an initial implementation of that. And from my point of view, I am trying to improve the boards and make sure that we've captured all the tasks from the offsite and all the discussion items that we had. I'm also trying to prioritize the security, sort of the outstanding security questions that we have and get those into the R&D discussions that I'm having with David and Srivatsan. So I've actually got a new schedule now with David and Srivatsan. Basically every week there's going to be a security meeting or a research meeting, I guess you could say. I'm going to do one Tuesday with David and one Tuesday with Srivatsan. So basically we'll be getting some multiple people's feedback on security issues and help with those, like the transaction spamming attacks and the equivocation discussion that we had, trying to really finalize how we're going to handle those and eventually getting into scalability, but that's a little bit further out on the roadmap. Okay. Cool, guys. Anything else? Anything else we want to cover? All right. Well, thanks for joining, everybody. We'll see you guys next time.